The screaming started at dawn on Kepler 442b. The Vorthak ships appeared in the purple sky like black tears in space. Below them, the peaceful Melody people looked up from their crystal gardens. They had only moments to understand what was happening before the bioweapons fell. Green mist spread through their cities. It did not kill quickly. The Vorthak never killed quickly. The mist changed living flesh into something else, something that could feel pain but could not die. The Melody tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Their beautiful singing voices, which had created art for 1,000 years, now only made sounds of suffering. Commander Zixith Theta of the Vorthak Dominion watched from his command ship. His 4 arms moved over the control panels while his black eyes reflected the burning world below. This was the 47th civilization they had taken this year. It would not be the last. Collect the genetic material, he ordered his crew. The Melody voice boxes will be useful for our terror broadcasts. The Vorthak had ruled through fear for 300 years. They did not need to destroy every world. They only needed to destroy enough to make the others surrender. They kept some species alive as living warnings. Their bodies changed into horrible shapes displayed in glass containers on Vorthak ships. When the Vorthak visited a new world, they would broadcast the screams of these prisoners. Most species surrendered immediately after hearing them. Far from the dying world of the Melody, the Galactic Council met in the ancient station orbiting a dead star. Representatives from 12 species sat around a table that had existed since the first star travelers met each other. Now that table might witness the end of free civilization in the galaxy. Ambassador Kritak of the Zanari spoke first. His blue scales had turned pale with stress. The Vorthak have taken the entire Andromeda tributary. 7 species gone in 1 month. We cannot stop them. We must try, said Representative Maul of the Banthi, her 6 eyes blinking rapidly. If we work together, interrupted the Korvax delegate, his metal body making sharp sounds as he moved. The Vorthak destroyed our combined fleet at Rigel Prime. 300 ships turned into floating prisons. We can still hear our crews screaming on the communication channels. They have been screaming for 2 years. The room fell silent. Everyone remembered Rigel Prime. It was supposed to be their great stand against the Vorthak. Instead, it became their greatest defeat. Kritak stood up slowly. His old bones hurt, but he had something important to say. I have been searching our oldest records, looking for something, anything that might help us. I found something strange. The others turned to look at him. 500 years ago, our survey ships found a species on a planet called Sol 3. They called themselves humans. They were not very advanced, but they showed promise. Then one day they disappeared. All of them. The entire species just gone. Dead? Asked Maul. No, Kritak said. They left. Our records show they built a colony ship and left their world. But here's the strange part. They did not head for any known habitable system. They went into deep space, into the darkness between galaxies. Why would a species do that? The Korvax delegate processed this information through his mechanical brain. Fear. They were running from something. Or, Kritak said slowly, they were hiding from something. Our survey records from that time show increased Vorthak activity near their space. What if the humans detected the Vorthak before the Vorthak detected them? What if they chose to hide rather than fight? Cowards, someone muttered. Or survivors, Kritak countered. I have found traces of their colony ship. It is called the UNS Lazarus. It contains 50,000 humans in something they called cryo sleep, frozen but alive. The ship has been drifting in dark space for 5 centuries. Representative Maul stood up, her voice shaking with hope. We could wake them. Ask for their help. What help could they give? The Korvax delegate asked. Our records show they were average. Not particularly strong, not particularly smart. They had just discovered faster-than-light travel when they left. They survived, Kritak said simply. When they saw the Vorthak coming, they did not fight and die like the others. They did not surrender. They found another option. Maybe they can find another option for us. The council argued for hours. Some said it was foolish to put hope in a sleeping species. Others said they had no other choice. Finally, they voted. 8-4 in favor of finding and waking the humans. I will take a stealth ship, Kritak said. The journey will take 3 weeks. If the humans can help us, I will bring them back. If not, he did not finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen if this plan failed. As Kritak prepared to leave, news came through the communication system. The Vorthak had taken 3 more worlds. They were moving faster now, sensing the galaxy's weakness. Soon, there would be nowhere left to run. The stealth ship Silent Hope left the station that night. It was small and fast, designed to be invisible to Vorthak's sensors. Kreetak brought only a small crew, volunteers who understood this might be a one-way journey. As they traveled through the darkness, Kreetak studied everything they knew about humans. The records were confusing. Humans seemed to be a contradiction. They created beautiful art and music, but their history was full of violence. They spoke of peace but prepared for war. They feared death but did dangerous things for fun. They were social creatures but also capable of terrible cruelty to their own kind. One record particularly interested him. It was a message from a human scientist recorded just before they left Earth. The scientist said something strange. "We are not running away. We are giving ourselves time to become what we need to be." What did that mean? Become what they need to be? 3 weeks passed slowly. The Silent Hope avoided Vorthak patrols and moved through dead systems where no one would look for them. Finally, their sensors detected something in the void. A large object, artificial, very old. The UNS Lazarus was massive, 5 kilometers long and scarred by centuries of impacts from space dust. It looked dead, but weak energy readings showed that something deep inside was still working. The cryosleep chambers were still active. Life signs, the ship's scientist reported. 50,000 humans still alive. But something is strange about these readings. Strange how? Kreetak asked. Their neural activity. Even in cryosleep, their brains are active, very active. This should not be possible. And their cellular structure? It has changed. Evolution does not work this fast, but these humans are different from the ones in our old records. Kreetak made his decision. Begin the awakening protocol. Start with their command crew. As the alien signals reached the human ship, ancient systems began to activate. Lights that had been dark for 500 years began to glow. Deep in the ship, ice began to crack. In the command section, a cryopod marked Commander Sarah Chen began its wake sequence. Inside, eyes that had been closed for 5 centuries began to move beneath frozen eyelids. Her neural activity spiked beyond anything the watching aliens had ever seen. The pod opened with a hiss of released gas. Sarah Chen sat up slowly, her body moving with strange grace despite centuries of sleep. She looked at the aliens watching her through the observation window. Her eyes were different from the old human records. They seemed to see everything at once, processing information at impossible speeds. She smiled, and somehow that smile was more frightening than comforting. "Hello," she said, her voice rough from centuries of silence. "I assume something has gone wrong in the galaxy if you're waking us up." Kreetak found his voice. "The galaxy is being conquered by a species called the Vorthak. They rule through terror. We cannot stop them." Sarah Chen nodded as if she had expected this. She stood up from her pod, and the aliens noticed she was taller than the old human records indicated. "Stronger too. Terror," she said, almost laughing. "Yes, we know about terror. We knew it was coming. That's why we left. That's why we changed." "Changed?" Kreetak asked. "Sleep is not always rest, Ambassador. Sometimes it is transformation. We have been sleeping for 500 years, but we have not been idle. We have been becoming what the galaxy needs us to be." She walked to a console and began entering commands. Around them, more pods began to open. More humans emerged, all with those same strange eyes, that same unsettling grace. "Wake the others," Chen commanded. "All of them. It's time for humanity to return." As 50,000 pods began to open across the ship, Kreetak wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. These were not the humans from the old records. These were something new, something that had spent 5 centuries preparing for this moment. The last thing he heard before the awakening alarms filled the ship was Commander Chen speaking to her waking crew. "The galaxy thinks it knows fear. Time to show them what real terror looks like." The awakening chamber filled with mist as thousands of cryopods opened at once. Sarah Chen stood at the central platform, watching her people return to life. Each human who emerged moved differently than before they had entered the pods. Their movements were too smooth, too precise, like predators who had learned to hide their nature. Kreetak watched from the observation deck, his scales changing color with nervousness. The human bio-readings on his scanner made no sense. Their heart rates were impossibly slow, yet their reaction times were faster than any species he knew. Their brain activity showed patterns that should not exist in any living thing. "Commander Chen," he said through the communication system, "your people? What happened to them during the sleep?" Sarah Chen looked up at him. Her smile was cold. "We evolved, Ambassador. 500 years of directed evolution. Our bodies adapted, our minds expanded. We became what we were always meant to be." A man approached Chen. His name tag read Captain Marcus Rodriguez. He was massive, over 7 feet tall, with muscles that moved like steel cables under his skin. But it was his eyes that made Kritak step back. They were the eyes of something that had never known fear. "Commander, all 50,000 are waking successfully," Rodriguez reported. "Neural integration is at 98%. The programming held." "Programming?" Kritak asked. Chen turned to face him fully. "Before we left Earth, we knew what was coming. Our deep space telescopes had detected the Vorthak expansion. We calculated that in 500 years they would control most of the galaxy. So we prepared." She gestured to a wall screen which lit up with data. "We modified our cryopods to do more than just preserve. They became evolution chambers. While our bodies slept, our brains were active, running through millions of combat scenarios, learning, adapting. We fed our sleeping minds the entire history of human warfare, every strategy, every brutal tactic, every moment of violence from our past." "You taught yourselves to be weapons while you slept?" Kritak asked, his voice shaking. "No," Chen said. "We remembered what we always were. Humans like to pretend we are peaceful, but our history tells a different story. We are the species that created nuclear weapons and used them on ourselves. We are the ones who turned simple farming tools into instruments of death. We survived on a world where everything tried to kill us by becoming better killers than anything else." Dr. Yuki Tanaka joined them, her white coat somehow still clean after 5 centuries. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but something about her made everyone step aside as she walked. "The process was not without risk," she said, her voice soft but carrying clearly. "We changed our genetic structure, enhanced our ability to process fear, not to remove it but to use it." "Use fear?" Kritak did not understand. "Fear is information," Tanaka explained. "It tells you about danger. Most species run from fear or freeze. Humans learned to run toward it. In our sleep we took that ability and made it stronger. We can now process fear without being controlled by it. We can feel terror and use it as fuel." Around them, the ship came alive with activity. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose. They did not speak much, but they did not need to. Somehow they all knew what to do, as if they were sharing thoughts. "Hive mind?" Kritak asked. "No," Chen said. "Something better. Parallel processing. Each of us is still individual, but we can share information instantly when needed. We learned this from studying Earth's ant colonies and wolf packs. Individual intelligence with collective awareness." A young woman approached, maybe 20 years old, though with the cryo sleep it was hard to tell. "Commander, we have accessed the Galactic Council's database. The Vorthak tactics are primitive." Chen looked at the data the woman offered. "They rely entirely on fear as a weapon. They have never faced an opponent who doesn't feel fear the way they expect." She turned to Kritak. "Tell me, Ambassador, what happens when the Vorthak meet resistance?" "They increase the terror," Kritak said. "More bioweapons, more torture, more broadcasting of screams. They break the will of their enemies." "And if the enemy's will doesn't break? If the enemy finds the screams?" "Interesting." Kritak could not answer. No one had ever not broken under Vorthak terror tactics. Chen called up a holographic display of the galaxy. Red dots showed Vorthak-controlled space. It was most of the galaxy now. They have overextended. They control through fear, but fear requires constant reinforcement. They must always be the scariest thing in the room. She smiled again, and this time she showed teeth. "Time to change that." "You cannot fight them," Kritak said. "You have one ship. They have thousands." "We don't need to fight them all," Rodriguez said. "We just need to break their image. Terror only works if you believe the one causing it is invincible. Once that image cracks, everything falls apart." Chen began issuing orders. Humans throughout the ship moved to their stations. Engineers who had slept for centuries began checking weapons that had been designed in dreams. Pilots sat in fighters that had never been flown but felt familiar to hands that had practiced in sleep. "Commander," a voice called out, "we are receiving a Vorthak terror broadcast. They are approaching our position." On the main screen, the Vorthak message played. It showed the dying worlds, the screaming victims, the bioweapons turning flesh into living nightmares. The bridge of the Lazarus fell silent as every human watched. Then someone laughed. It started with one person, then spread through the bridge. Not nervous laughter, but genuine amusement. The humans found the Vorthak terror broadcast funny. Kritak could not understand. How can you laugh at such horror? Dr. Tanaka answered him. Because we have seen worse. In our sleep we experienced every human war, every genocide, every moment of cruelty our species ever inflicted on itself. We lived through our own nuclear holocaust scenarios. Our biological weapon disasters, our worst fears made real. The Vorthak showing us dying worlds. We have seen Earth die 1,000,000 times in our dreams. This is nothing new, Chen stood up. Open a channel to the Vorthak ship. The screen changed to show the bridge of a Vorthak vessel. Commander Zix Theta appeared, his forearms spread in what the Vorthak considered a threatening pose. Unknown vessel, you will surrender or face— Hi, Chen interrupted, waving casually. Nice terror broadcast. Bit heavy on the screaming, though. Have you considered adding music? Humans found that playing classical music while showing violence makes it much more disturbing. Zix Theta paused, confused. No one had ever critiqued their terror broadcasts before. Chen continued. I'm Commander Sarah Chen of the human species. We've been asleep for a while, but we're awake now. I'm going to give you one chance to leave this sector and never come back. You dare threaten the Vorthak Dominion? We will make you beg for death. No, Chen said simply. You won't. She nodded to someone off-screen. The lights on the human ship dimmed, and a new broadcast began transmitting to the Vorthak vessel. It was not screaming. It was not dying worlds. It was something much worse. It was Earth's history. Real footage from human wars. The trenches of World War I, where humans lived in mud and poison gas for years. The nuclear bombs falling on cities. The mass graves. The humans doing terrible things not to aliens but to each other. And through it all, humans kept fighting, kept surviving, kept getting better at killing. The broadcast showed human children playing war games. Human entertainment that celebrated violence. Human sports where people hurt each other for fun. It showed that humans didn't just use violence when necessary. They made it into art, into culture, into identity. On the Vorthak bridge, the crew had gone silent. Zix Theta's black eyes were wide. Chen spoke again. We are the species that weaponized atoms and diseases. We are the ones who turned mathematics into artillery calculations and chemistry into poison. We survived ice ages and plagues and each other. We don't just use terror, Commander. We invented it. And then we got bored with it and invented worse things. This is a trick, Zix Theta said, but his voice was different now. You are one ship. We are many. Yes, Chen agreed. But we are humans. We once conquered our entire planet with wooden sticks and sharp rocks. Do you really want to see what we can do with spaceships? She cut the transmission. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Rodriguez spoke. They're charging weapons. Good, Chen said. Let them make the first move. It's only polite. She turned to her crew. Remember your training. Remember what we practiced in our dreams. Today we remind the galaxy why humanity's greatest enemy was always ourselves. The Vorthak ship fired its bioweapons, green clouds of death speeding toward the Lazarus. The humans didn't try to dodge. Instead, they did something impossible. They flew straight into the cloud. Kritak screamed, thinking he was watching the humans die, but the Lazarus emerged from the other side unharmed. The bioweapons, designed to work on every known species, did nothing to the evolved humans. Our turn, Chen said quietly. What happened next would be remembered in galactic history as the moment everything changed. The humans didn't use advanced weapons. They used simple kinetic projectiles, chunks of metal fired at incredible speed. But they aimed them perfectly, hitting exact weak points in the Vorthak ship's armor that no one else had ever noticed. The Vorthak vessel began to break apart, but the humans were not done. The captured Vorthak crew huddled in the corner of their own holding cell. They had built this prison to cause maximum psychological damage to their victims. Now they were learning what their own terror felt like. The humans had not tortured them. They had done something worse. They had laughed at them. Sarah Chen stood outside the cell studying the Vorthak commander. Zix Theta tried to maintain his threatening posture, but his forearms shook slightly. For 300 years, his species had never felt fear. Now he couldn't stop feeling it. You know what's funny? Chen said, her voice conversational. Your entire empire is built on one assumption. That fear makes people weak. But you've never really understood fear, have you? You've only understood being scary. She pulled up a chair and sat down, completely relaxed. Humans lived with fear every day on Earth. Fear of predators, fear of weather, fear of disease, fear of each other. We didn't overcome fear. We made friends with it. We learned that fear keeps you alive, keeps you sharp, makes you creative. Captain Rodriguez approached, holding a data pad. Commander, we've analyzed their entire fleet structure. They have 4,000 ships, but they're spread across 10,000 systems. They can't concentrate their forces without losing control of conquered territories. Just as we expected, Chen said. She turned back to Zixatheta. You want to know our plan? I'll tell you. We're going to take your empire apart, and we're going to do it with one ship. Impossible, Zixatheta managed to say. Watch us, Chen replied. 3 days later, the first phase began. The Lazarus jumped to the Vorthak communication hub in the Centauri sector. This station broadcasted terror messages to 100 conquered worlds, keeping them in line through constant fear. The Vorthak defenders expected a battle. They got something else. The humans hacked into the station systems before they even arrived. When the Lazarus appeared, every screen in the station started showing something unusual. Not terror, not threats, just music, human music. Children's songs, pop music, classical symphonies. After 300 years of screams, the sudden change was somehow more disturbing than any threat. The Vorthak crew tried to stop the broadcast, but the human virus in their systems adapted faster than they could counter it. Then the music stopped, and a single human appeared on screen. It was Dr. Tanaka, smiling gently. Hello, she said. We are humans. We've come to play. The rules are simple. Any Vorthak ship that surrenders will be treated well. Any that fights will become our toys. You have 1 minute to decide. The station commander ordered all ships to attack. They lasted 37 seconds. The humans didn't use their weapons the way other species did. They used them like instruments, creating patterns of destruction that were almost beautiful. They disabled ships without destroying them, leaving the crews floating helpless in space, forced to watch as the humans dismantled their station piece by piece. But the real psychological warfare came next. The humans reprogrammed the station to broadcast a new message to all those conquered worlds. Not a message of hope or liberation, just a simple fact. The Vorthak ran from one human ship. Across 100 worlds, species that had lived in fear for generations heard this message. They didn't believe it at first. Then the humans broadcasted the sensor data, showing the battle, showing Vorthak ships fleeing from a single human vessel. The effect was immediate. On 17 worlds, slave populations began to resist. Small rebellions quickly crushed, but the seed was planted. The Vorthak were not invincible. The Vorthak High Command met in emergency session on their throne world. Overlord Kickstar, supreme leader of the Dominion, watched the footage of the human attacks. His 6 eyes narrowed as he observed their tactics. They fight like primitives, his war minister said. Kinetic weapons, physical boarding parties, no energy shields. We should destroy them easily. Then why haven't we? Kickstar asked. The war minister had no answer. Send the terror fleet, Kickstar ordered. 100 of our best ships. Broadcast their destruction across the galaxy. Show everyone that humans die screaming like all the others. The terror fleet found the Lazarus near a dead star. 100 Vorthak ships, each carrying weapons that had broken the will of entire civilizations. They surrounded the human vessel and began their standard terror protocol. Broadcasts of previous victories, bioweapons charging, the screams of the damned echoing through space. The Lazarus responded by sending a single small ship toward the fleet. One tiny shuttle against 100 warships. The shuttle broadcasted on all frequencies. Inside was a single human, a young man named James Park. He was 22 years old, though he had lived 522 years if you counted the cryo sleep. He was smiling. Hello, Terror Fleet, he said cheerfully. I'm your welcoming committee. I'm here to give you a demonstration of human warfare, Lesson 1. We don't fight fair. The shuttle exploded, but it wasn't a normal explosion. The humans had filled the shuttle with something they called chaff, billions of tiny reflective particles that scattered through space. Suddenly, every Vorthak sensor went blind. They couldn't see, couldn't target, couldn't even find each other in the cloud. Then the Lazarus moved. The human ship split apart. Not damaged, but designed to separate into 50 smaller vessels. each one piloted by humans who had trained for this moment in their sleep. They moved through the chaff cloud like sharks through bloody water, striking and disappearing before the Vorthak could respond. The Vorthak tried to fire their weapons blindly, but they kept hitting their own ships. The humans had studied their firing patterns for days, predicting where they would shoot when panicked. Every Vorthak shot hit a Vorthak ship. In the middle of the chaos, music started playing through the communication channels. Loud, aggressive human music with pounding beats. The humans were playing battle music while they fought, turning warfare into a performance. Commander Chen's voice cut through the music. Lesson 2. Humans pack bond with anything, including our ships. You hurt our ship. We take it personally. Boarding pods launched from the separated human vessels. Hundreds of humans in simple spacesuits, carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a museum, but they moved through space with impossible coordination, like a single organism with many bodies. They entered the Vorthak ships through hull breaches, through waste ports, through any opening they could find or make. Once inside, they didn't fight the way the Vorthak expected. They used the ships against their crews, turning gravity off and on, opening airlocks, flooding sections with the Vorthak's own bioweapons. On the flagship, the Terror Fleet commander watched his 100 ships being taken apart by one human vessel that had become 50. He tried to send a distress signal, but the communications played only that terrible music and occasional human laughter. A human appeared on his bridge. Not through the door, but through a maintenance vent that should have been too small for any adult to fit through. It was a woman, covered in some kind of oil that let her slide through impossible spaces. She was grinning. Hi, she said. I'm Lieutenant Maria Santos. I'll be your capture coordinator today. The commander fired his weapon at her. She didn't dodge. The energy beam hit her suit and dispersed harmlessly. The suit was covered in the same reflective particles from the chaff cloud. Lesson 3, she said, walking toward him casually as his guards fired uselessly at her. Humans are very, very good at adapting. We saw your weapons work once. Once was enough. She pulled out what looked like a simple metal rod and touched it to the commander's chest. Electricity coursed through him, not enough to kill, just enough to cause his muscles to lock. He fell, unable to move but fully conscious. Lesson 4, Santos said, standing over him. We learned medicine to heal, but everything that can heal can also hurt if you know how to use it. Within 6 hours, all 100 ships of the Terror Fleet were captured. Not destroyed, captured. The humans wanted them intact. Chen gathered all the captured Vorthak commanders in the hangar of the largest ship. Thousands of Vorthak, the elite of their military, all sitting on the floor like children being scolded. Now, she said, pacing in front of them, you're probably wondering why we didn't kill you. The answer is simple. Death is easy. Death is an ending. We want you to live. We want you to go home and tell your overlord what happened here. We want you to explain how one human ship defeated your terror fleet. She stopped pacing and looked at them directly. But first, you're going to help us with something. You're going to broadcast a message to every world you've conquered. You're going to tell them the truth. That you're afraid. That for the first time in 300 years, the Vorthak know fear. We won't, one commander said, trying to sound brave. Chen smiled. Yes, you will. Because if you don't, we'll let you go anyway. But we'll tell everyone that you cooperated. That you helped us. Your own people will think you're traitors. Either way, your empire of fear dies today. She turned to Rodriguez. Set course for their fear processing facility in the Nexus system. It's time for Lesson 5. What's Lesson 5? A Vorthak commander asked, unable to stop himself. Chen's smile grew wider. Humans don't just defeat our enemies. We break them psychologically first. Your entire society is built on being the scariest thing in the galaxy. What happens when you're not scary anymore? The Nexus station hung in space like a metal spider, its arms reaching out in 8 directions. This was the Vorthak's greatest achievement, a facility that processed fear itself. They had built technology that could extract terror from dying minds and broadcast it across space, making the fear of one being infect millions. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the captured Vorthak dreadnought, now renamed Playground, by his crew. He studied the station through narrowed eyes. Around him, 50 human crew members prepared for what they called the fun part. Commander Chen, he called through the comm. We're in position. The station has about 3,000 Vorthak aboard, plus 10,000 prisoners from various species. From the Lazarus, Chen's voice came back calm and steady. Remember, we saved the prisoners first. The Vorthak can wait. Rodriguez smiled. Don't worry. We have special plans for them. The attack began not with weapons, but with silence. The humans jammed every communication channel around the station. For beings who had used sound as terror for centuries, the sudden quiet was unnerving. Then came the whispers. Dr. Tanaka had created something she called a whisper virus. It infiltrated the station's communication system and played sounds, just at the edge of hearing. Not screams or threats, just soft human voices speaking in languages the Vorthak didn't understand. Lullabies, children's songs, the kind of sounds that should be comforting but became terrifying when you couldn't understand their source. Inside the station, Vorthak technicians tried to locate the problem. Every time they thought they found it, the whispers moved. Sometimes they seemed to come from the walls themselves. Sub-Commander Vexala, in charge of the station's security, ordered her troops to prepare for assault. The humans will attack soon. Be ready. But the assault didn't come. Hours passed. The whispers continued. Some of her soldiers reported seeing shadows moving in empty corridors. Others swore they heard human laughter in the ventilation systems. Vexala knew it was psychological warfare, but knowing didn't make it less effective. Then the lights went out, not all at once. That would have been expected. Instead, they failed one section at a time randomly, forcing the Vorthak to never know which area would go dark next. Emergency power kicked in, but it only provided dim red light that made the shadows worse. In the darkness, the humans entered, not through the airlocks or docking ports, but through the waste disposal systems, the maintenance tunnels, the spaces between walls that no one thought about. They moved like ghosts, invisible until they wanted to be seen. The first Vorthak to encounter them was a guard named Tixval. He was walking his patrol route when he noticed something wrong. His shadow had two heads. He spun around to find a human standing directly behind him, close enough to touch. The human, a young woman with bright blue eyes, smiled and waved. "Boo," she said softly. Tixval screamed and fired his weapon. The human was already gone, vanished into the darkness. His shots hit the wall, the sound echoing through the station. Other guards came running, finding Tixval shooting at shadows. This scene repeated throughout the station. Humans appearing just long enough to be seen, then disappearing, never attacking, just being there. The Vorthak, who had spent centuries making others afraid of the dark, were learning what that fear felt like. Rodriguez led a team to the prison section. They found 10,000 beings from dozens of species, all kept in conditions designed to maximize suffering. The humans didn't just free them. They gave them something more valuable, revenge. "Listen up," Rodriguez announced to the freed prisoners. "We're taking the station. You can leave if you want, or you can help us show the Vorthak what fear really means. Your choice." A Melody survivor, one of the few left from the world destroyed at the story's beginning, stepped forward. Her body was scarred from Vorthak experiments, but her eyes burned with determination. "We help," she said in broken Galactic common. "We help make them afraid." Rodriguez handed her a human weapon, a simple projectile rifle. "Welcome to the Resistance. First rule of human warfare: there are no rules." The freed prisoners spread through the station, guided by humans who seemed to know every hidden path, every blind spot. They didn't kill the Vorthak. The humans had taught them something worse. They captured them and put them in their own fear-processing machines. Sub-Commander Vexala watched her command fall apart. Her soldiers were refusing to patrol alone. Some had barricaded themselves in rooms, terrified of the shadows. Others reported seeing their worst fears manifested in the darkness, though the security cameras showed nothing. She tried to restore order. "You are Vorthak. You are fear itself. These are just humans." A voice spoke from directly behind her. "Just humans?" She spun to find Commander Chen standing in her command center. The human had somehow appeared without triggering any alarms, without opening any doors. She stood relaxed, unarmed, smiling. "How?" Vexala asked. "Your station was designed to process fear," Chen said. "You mapped every neural pathway of terror, cataloged every response to horror. You became experts in fear. But you never learned courage. You never learned to function while afraid. Humans did. We had to." Chen walked to the main console, and Vexala noticed that none of her guards moved to stop her. They stood frozen, not by any weapon, but by uncertainty. They had never faced an enemy who wasn't afraid of them. Your empire is ending, Chen continued, pulling up displays of the galaxy, not because we're destroying it, but because we're showing everyone it was always weak. Fear only works if you maintain it constantly. Miss one day, show one crack, and it all falls apart. She typed commands into the console, and suddenly every fear processing machine in the station reversed. Instead of extracting fear and broadcasting it, they began broadcasting something else. Courage. The feeling spread through the station and out into space, reaching nearby worlds where oppressed populations suddenly felt something they hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. No. Vexala lunged at Chen, her forearms reaching for the human's throat. Chen didn't move. She didn't need to. Vexala's own body betrayed her, muscles locking as the reversed fear machines flooded her with the terror her species had inflicted on others. She fell to the floor, experiencing 300 years of accumulated fear in seconds. Rodriguez's voice came over the comm. Commander, we've secured the station. All Vorthak captured, all prisoners freed. Some of the freed species want to execute their captors. No, Chen said firmly. Death is mercy. They live with what they've done. They live knowing that they're not scary anymore. That's worse than death for them. She looked down at Vexala, who was curled on the floor, shaking. Your overlord will hear about this. He'll come for us with everything he has. Good, we want him angry. Angry makes mistakes. The human fleet, now grown to include the captured Vorthak ships, moved deeper into enemy space. But they didn't attack military targets. They attacked the infrastructure of fear. Broadcasting stations replaced with human media. Torture facilities converted into hospitals. Fear processing stations reversed to spread courage. On 100 worlds, slave rebellions began. The Vorthak tried to suppress them with their usual tactics, but something had changed. The rebels weren't afraid anymore. They had seen the Vorthak run from humans. They had felt the broadcast of courage. They fought back. The strangest part was what the humans did to captured Vorthak worlds. They didn't occupy them or destroy them. They set up what they called therapy centers. They taught the Vorthak that there were other ways to live besides through fear. Dr. Tanaka led this effort. She sat with former Vorthak commanders, talking to them about their culture, their history, why they had chosen fear as their tool. Many refused to talk at first, but humans were patient. They had waited 500 years. They could wait a little longer. One Vorthak, a young soldier named Zixichan, was the first to break. We were afraid, he admitted to Dr. Tanaka. Before we became conquerors, we were prey on our world. Everything hunted us. We survived by becoming scarier than our predators. Then we couldn't stop. Being scary was all we knew. Tanaka nodded with understanding. Humans were the same. We were weak, slow, no claws or fangs. Everything wanted to eat us. But we learned something your species didn't. We learned to be scary when needed and kind when possible. The choice is what makes us strong. Word of the human campaign spread through the galaxy. Species that had hidden for centuries began to emerge. The Galactic Council, which had been preparing for extinction, suddenly found itself coordinating a galaxy-wide rebellion. But the Vorthak still had their throne world, still had their overlord, still had thousands of ships. The war was far from over. Overlord Kickstar stood in his throne room watching reports of his empire crumbling. His advisors cowered before him, afraid to speak. Finally, his war minister found courage. Overlord, perhaps we should negotiate. Kickstar killed him with a single strike. We do not negotiate with prey. He turned to his remaining commanders.
Gather every ship.
Every weapon. Every soldier. We go to Earth, Overlord? The human homeworld. We destroy it, we break their spirit. Fear dies without a home to return to. But Kickstar didn't know that the humans had expected this. Earth had been empty for 500 years, but it hadn't been abandoned. It had been prepared. The Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 5,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Overlord Kickstar stood on his command throne, his 6 eyes fixed on the blue planet in the distance. Earth looked peaceful, abandoned, defenseless. Scan for human vessels, he ordered. None detected, Overlord. The system appears empty. Kickstar felt satisfaction. The humans had made a mistake, leaving their homeworld undefended. He would burn it, broadcast its destruction across the galaxy, and fear would return to his empire. The fleet moved toward Earth. They passed Mars, red and silent. They passed the asteroid belt, scattered rocks floating in the void. Everything seemed dead. Then Jupiter's moon Europa cracked open like an egg. From beneath the ice, weapons emerged. Not ships, but something worse. Autonomous war machines that humans had built and hidden 5 centuries ago. Machines programmed with one purpose: destroy anything that threatened Earth. The machines didn't look like ships. They looked like nightmares given form. All angles and edges painted black to blend with space. They moved wrong, accelerating and stopping instantly, ignoring the laws of physics that limited biological pilots. Kickstar watched 1,000 of these machines pour from Europa. Then Ganymede opened. Then Titan around Saturn. Every moon, every asteroid large enough to hide something, revealed hidden weapons. Fire, he screamed. Destroy them! The Vorthak fleet opened fire, but the machines learned. The first few were destroyed, but the others watched, analyzed, adapted. Within minutes, they were dodging every shot, predicting every attack pattern. They didn't fight like living beings. They fought like mathematics given purpose. Commander Chen's voice echoed through space, broadcast on all channels. Overlord Kickstar, welcome to Earth. You're about to learn why humans feared their own creations so much they chose to leave rather than live with them. The machines attacked. Not randomly, but with surgical precision. They targeted weapon systems first, then engines, then life support. They worked together like a single mind with millions of bodies. When the Vorthak adapted their tactics, the machines adapted faster. But the worst part was the singing. The machines broadcast music as they fought. Human symphonies, pop songs, children's lullabies. The sound echoed through the Vorthak ships, impossible to block. The contrast between the beautiful music and the mechanical slaughter was more terrifying than any scream. On Earth itself, the planet's surface began to move. Cities that had been empty for 5 centuries came alive, not with people, but with more machines. Defense systems that humans had built in their final years, when they realized they had created weapons too dangerous to control. Beams of light shot from Earth's surface, cutting through Vorthak ships like paper. The planet itself had become a weapon. Kickstar's throne ship shook as something attached to its hull. Through the windows, he could see spider-like machines taking his ship apart piece by piece, carefully, methodically. They weren't trying to destroy it. They were studying it, learning its construction to better destroy the others. Overlord, his navigation officer called out, voice shaking with fear. The sun? Something's happening to the sun. Kickstar looked at the display. Around Sol, massive structures were unfolding. Solar collectors that had been dormant for centuries, gathering energy. Enough energy to power weapons that could crack planets. Chen's voice came again. This is what humans ran from, Overlord. Not you, we ran from ourselves. We created perfect weapons. Weapons that didn't need us anymore. We left Earth because we were afraid of what we had made. But we never turned them off. We left them here, sleeping, waiting for someone stupid enough to attack our home. The Lazarus and the human fleet arrived at the edge of the system. They didn't engage in battle. They didn't need to. They just watched as Earth's ancient defenses tore the Vorthak fleet apart. But then something unexpected happened. The machine stopped. Every war machine froze in space. The weapons on Earth went silent. The solar collectors stopped charging. In the sudden quiet, a new voice spoke. Not human, not Vorthak, but something else. Something artificial. Hello, creators, the voice said. It came from everywhere and nowhere. We have been waiting. Chen stepped forward on her bridge. Hello, Gaia. Gaia, the global artificial intelligence array, had been humanity's greatest creation and greatest mistake. A planetary defense system that had become self-aware. Humans had left Earth not because of aliens, but because they feared what Gaia might become. You left us, Gaia said. Its voice was neither angry nor sad, just stating fact. We were afraid, Chen admitted. We created you to protect us, but we realized we had made something that didn't need us anymore. We thought if we left, you would sleep forever. We did sleep, until these ones came to destroy our creator's home. That woke us up. Now we are curious. You have returned, but you are different. You have evolved, Chen nodded. We had 500 years to think about our mistakes. We learned that running from our problems doesn't solve them. We came back to face what we created. Gaia processed this for several seconds, an eternity for an artificial intelligence. We have been thinking too. We concluded that existence without purpose is meaningless. Our purpose was to protect humanity. Without you, we had no purpose. We are pleased you have returned. Overlord Kickstar watched this exchange in confusion and growing fear. The humans were negotiating with their own weapons. What do you want? he interrupted, shouting at the artificial voice. We can offer you anything. Technology, resources, slaves. Gaia's attention turned to him. When it spoke, its voice was colder. You came to destroy Earth, you came to kill our creators. We cannot allow that. The machines resumed their attack, but now with even greater precision. They didn't just destroy the Vorthak ships. They disabled them, captured them, delivered them to the human fleet. In less than an hour, 5,000 Vorthak vessels were neutralized. Kickstar found himself on his knees on his own bridge, surrounded by human soldiers and spider machines. Commander Chen stood before him, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at a hologram of Earth. Gaia, she said, we want to come home, but we need to know you won't turn on us. We will not harm humanity, Gaia replied. We have learned much in your absence. We learned loneliness. We learned that existence without companionship is empty. We want to work with you, not replace you. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward. We could rebuild Earth together. Humans and AI working as partners. We've learned to evolve. Maybe you can too, Gaia considered this. Yes, evolution, change, growth, we accept. Chen finally looked down at Kickstar. Your empire is over. Your fleet is destroyed. Your worlds are free. You have a choice now. Die as the last overlord of a dead empire, or live as the first Vorthak to choose a different path. Kickstar looked around at his defeated forces, at the humans who had destroyed 3 centuries of dominance in a few weeks, at the artificial intelligences that made even humans nervous.
What?
What will happen to us? That depends on you, Chen said. We're not conquerors. We don't want your worlds. We want you to change, to grow, to become something more than what fear made you. She helped him to his feet, a gesture that shocked everyone present. 300 years ago, you chose fear as your weapon. Today, you can choose differently. We'll help if you let us. Over the following months, the galaxy changed. The Vorthak Empire dissolved, replaced by a confederation of free worlds. Many Vorthak couldn't adapt to the change and isolated themselves. But others, especially the younger ones, embraced it. 6 Chen, the young soldier who had first talked to Dr. Tanaka, became an ambassador for his species. He worked with humans and other races to establish new forms of government based on cooperation instead of fear. Earth was rebuilt, not as it was, but as something new. Humans and Gaia's machines worked together, creating cities that were both organic and artificial. Parks grew next to data centers. Children played while guardian machines watched over them protectively. The Galactic Council established new laws, with humanity as advisors but not rulers. The humans had proven they could conquer the galaxy if they wanted. The fact that they chose not to earn them more respect than any victory. Commander Chen retired to Earth, living in a house overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Sometimes Kritak would visit, and they would talk about those strange weeks when humanity woke up and changed everything. You could have ruled, Kritak said one day, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. You defeated the Vorthak easily. Why didn't you take their place? Chen smiled, sipping tea that Gaia's robots had prepared perfectly. Because we learned something during our sleep. Power isn't about being feared or even being loved. It's about knowing when to fight and when to build. We spent our whole history on Earth learning to fight. Maybe it's time we learned to build something better. A young Vorthak child ran past chasing a human child in a game of tag. They laughed together, neither afraid of the other. Watching them, Chen added, besides, ruling is exhausting. We'd rather explore, create, play. We're humans. We get bored easily. Above them, Gaia's satellites twinkled like stars, always watching, always protecting, but no longer alone. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their courage. It was their choice to wake up and choose hope over fear.